John, we appreciate you answering the call. Of course, Brent Venables took the podium as the first time as an SEC head coach. And is there anything in particular that stood out in regards to what Venables had to say at the podium, or side sessions or otherwise?
For Brent Venables, he is always going to be somebody that exudes a little bit of confidence while also walking that fine line with humility. He's not going to be, a very boisterous or proud, if that's the way to put it, but he is going to talk about Oklahoma's success. And that's what he did. He went out there and he described that Oklahoma is a program that's had more than 100 years of success. They've got, 50 conference championships, 7 national championships, 7 Heisman winners. There's a lot of success for Oklahoma to be proud of as they enter the SEC, while also understanding that there's a challenge that they're going to be facing week to week in the SEC. He mentioned off camera, in some of the side sessions, as being reported that Oklahoma didn't necessarily have the best response to success after beating Texas last year. And we've seen that over the years with the Oklahoma Sooners over the last decade. Teddy Lehman, Oklahoma linebacker great, described it as sleepwalking today on Twitter, where this was a program that, you go back to 2020, they had back-to-back losses to Iowa State, Kansas State. You even go back to this past season when, they lost to Kansas and Oklahoma State in back-to-back weeks. Oklahoma needs the challenge. They need to understand that, hey, every single week is going to be a bit of a gauntlet. They're not going to be able to sleepwalk through any games. You go against an Auburn team in Jordan-Hare Stadium, your first SEC road trip. It doesn't matter what Auburn's record was last year. That's going to be a really, really tough game for the Oklahoma Sooners.
John, you brought up Texas, so I'm going to go this route because I think this has been an interesting dynamic here, in that Texas, aside from one good season in which they won the Sugar Bowl under Tom Herman and lost to Oklahoma in the conference championship, they've been down. They've been down since 2009 up until last season, of course. Oklahoma's been owning the Big 12. Texas, to me, as an outsider who just watches the sport, talks to fans, but I've not covered those teams in person. Texas seems to be the more boisterous fan base and more boisterous brand. And now they've got a season to brag about to go into the SEC. And the national narrative is that Texas is ready. Where if we're just one season removed from 8-5, and a season removed before that from 5-7, where people were like, Texas is going to be in the SEC. Boy, they're going to get embarrassed. So they've suddenly arrived. Okay, it's one season. Oklahoma won the game in the matchup between the two teams. And Oklahoma, man, you look at Texas, overtime scare against Kansas State, 4th down scare against Houston. They had their close calls. It could have easily been Oklahoma in the playoff and not Texas. And you wonder how much that changes the evaluation and perception of most people as the readiness of these programs going into the SEC.
One thing I've said, and I've said it multiple times, is I feel like the media has been waiting for Texas to do just this so that they could have a whole offseason to talk about how good Texas is, that Texas is quote unquote back. But this is an Oklahoma program that's bringing back a lot of talent. Even though there's a lot of turnover, they have one of the most talented and deepest defenses in the country, bringing back a lot of experience and production on that defensive side of the ball. And that's going to help them. Texas has got talent. They're going to be a very talented team. That's never been the issue with Texas, right? It's been a matter of maintaining that consistent level of production and performance. They lost 11 guys to the NFL draft, and that's not going to be a problem. To me, it's surprising we're not hearing more discussion about that. Did they add guys through the transfer portal? Absolutely. Isaiah Bond, he's going to be a problem for everybody that lines up opposite him at the cornerback position, even in the SEC. They've got a really good offensive line. They've got a quarterback in Quinn Ewers who is pretty good. I don't think he's reached that place where we just view him as a no doubt elite quarterback prospect. I think he's been pretty good and he's got good tools, but I don't think he's this can't miss guy right now and somebody that you're automatically asserting as the Heisman favorite. Now, I think there's questions about Texas, even if they've had this successful season. The schedule, it lays out pretty well for them, even though they do have Georgia on the slate. And I think that's where some of the discrepancy lies, is that Oklahoma has got 6 teams on their conference schedule that are probably going to be in the top 15 of the AP and USA Today coaches poll when those get released in August. The Texas Longhorns, they don't have that same level of depth on their schedule in the SEC, and that's just the way it broke. Oklahoma fans, we're not fearing that. We realize that it's going to be tough, but this is what you wanted to get into the SEC for these marquee matchups, this list of games that are going to move the needle every single week. So it's exciting. Yeah. Are they going to have challenges? No doubt about it. But I think this Oklahoma team is getting set up for success in the SEC. They've bolstered the defensive line by adding a guy like Dominic Williams, one of the most high profile defensive tackle prospects in the transfer portal this offseason. They were able to bring back Dejon Terry, who helped really revolutionize their short yardage defense at defensive tackle. They've had some of their best recruiting classes under Brent Venables over the last 3 years. They've got blue chip prospects on both sides of the ball, including a quarterback in Jackson Arnold, who has the chance to be one of Oklahoma's best. And he's going to be, I think by the time his career is said and done, remembered in the same light as a Baker Mayfield or a Kyler Murray or Jalen Hurts or Sam Bradford. I mean, he's got the talent, he's got the arm, he's got the right mindset, the intangibles to go and be every bit as successful as some of those other guys.
And we certainly see a lot of Danny Stutzman and Billy Bowman on preseason all-conference and all-America lists, and Peyton Bowen proved to be one of the elite freshman defensive players in the country with a world of potential. We got John Williams here from Sooners Wire breaking down OU as the Sooners headed to Dallas this week. They're used to going there for a football game against Texas, of course, but they do that for the first time at SEC Media Days. Sticking with the defense, this is the best defense, or could be the best defense since, fill in the blank for me. It's been a long time.
I mean, you might think about 2010, 2009, 2008. I mean, the Gerald McCoy, Tommy Harris, those years where Gerald McCoy was at 2008, went and got drafted in 2009. That might be the last time Oklahoma had a truly elite defensive tackle prospect. And you feel really, really good about what they've got up the middle now. Now, some of their defensive tackles that you're really excited about are true freshmen coming into this year. David Stone, Jaden Jackson, 2 guys that have legit NFL talent. They're just true freshmen. But a guy like Dominic Williams, again, he's going to be around 320. He's going to be able to play that nose tackle position, but he also has the juice. He's got the athleticism to be a difference maker at the 3 technique defensive tackle spot as well. You talked about Danny Stutzman. I mean, I really think he and Billy Bowman could have gone in the top 100 of the NFL draft in 2024, but decided to come back for one more year. That's huge. So up the middle, Oklahoma is really, really strong. And then at the cornerback spot, that's where a lot of the questions are going to be and where the camp competition is going to be focused on, because you don't really know exactly who's going to be starting on the outside for you. You feel really good about Gentry Williams, an Oklahoma native, was a 4-star prospect in the 2022 recruiting class, but had some injury difficulties last year. When he was on the field, he was Oklahoma's best cover corner, and he was really, really good. Opened the Red River rivalry with an interception of Quinn Ewers early in that game, but he battled shoulder issues all season long. And then it's the other spot. Okay. Is it going to be Woody Washington? Well, they're talking about moving the veteran corner around a lot in the defense. Could play some safety, could play some of the Brent Venables cheetah, but they've got some other guys at cornerback that are going to be competing for snaps that were blue chip prospects in their own right. So it's going to be fascinating to see what lands at corner, but the talent along the defensive line is much better than what it was just a few years ago. At linebacker, they've got great depth, and the safety position is one that I think everybody's really excited about. You mentioned Bowman, you mentioned Peyton Bowen, but they've got a guy in Robert Spears Jennings, a Tulsa native, who came on strong when he got opportunities last year and just plays fast and he plays physical, and he's going to take a step, and I think going to be one of Oklahoma's breakout players this year.
Of course, it's become rather frequent that a big-time quarterback misses the bowl game preparing for the NFL draft. This is providing an opportunity to see the next player. We could go across the country. Garrett Nussmeier, LSU, stepping in for Jaden Daniels, lit up Wisconsin. Caleb Williams sitting down, and of course Miller Moss, Louisville. Jackson Dart showed us a little bit of both in regards to, there were the turnovers, but there were the big yardage plays as well in the bowl game, and just talk about his development and preparing for this season.
Yeah, Jackson Arnold's one of those kids that he's got all the talent in the world. He's got the big arm. He can make all the throws. I think what we saw against Arizona in the Alamo Bowl was figuring out there's a few throws you can't make. And at the collegiate level, you cannot be late. He had Drake Stoops running down the sideline, and it would have been a really easy completion, but he just hesitated and didn't throw that ball on time. And by the time he let it loose, the safety was coming across, and it was a no-doubter interception. And then, the other couple interceptions that he threw, I think a couple of those were just really good plays by the Arizona defense. I mean, he made good throws. They just came downhill, made a really, really nice play on the ball. So just a learning opportunity for him, figuring out, and he mentioned it at SEC Media Days, just figuring out what I can get away with and what I can't, not trying to play outside of myself and play outside of the system. And I think that is what's going to be the biggest development of this season, is understanding, hey, play within the system. Don't try to do too much. And then also throw on time. Don't be late, because when you're late at the collegiate level, and then especially at the NFL level, you're going to get picked off.
John, before we let you go, we got a question coming in from our guy, Jackson, who asks, who do you miss more, Nebraska or Oklahoma State?
So I asked this question also recently, and the prevailing answer was Nebraska. That's one of those rivalries that, similar to Texas, it dates back a long, long time, especially some of the older fans that watched Oklahoma football in the 70s. They remember the back and forth between Barry Switzer and Tom Osborne. And when those two teams were basically at the height, they were the pinnacle of college football. They were the Georgia, Alabama back in the 70s, just going back and forth and trading, national titles and conference titles in the Big Eight. I, for one, being an Oklahoma native, I love the Bedlam rivalry. I think it means a lot to the state. I think it means a lot to fans. I'm out in the eastern half of the state, where there's a lot more Oklahoma State fans than there are. I mean, I say a lot more, but there's a bigger percentage of Oklahoma State fans out here than there might be in Oklahoma City. So we get to interact a lot more, and we get to talk Bedlam and go back and forth and have that rivalry trash talk. But I think overall, it's Nebraska. When Nebraska got put on the non-conference schedule, I had Tony Casillas on our show just a few years back, and he talked about how important it was to bring Nebraska back onto the schedule. And if anybody could choose an annual non-conference game between Oklahoma State and Nebraska, I think a large percentage of Oklahoma fans would choose Nebraska.
John Williams, check out his work there on Sooners Wire. John, we appreciate you taking the call and jumping on here with us.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. We're just 6 weeks away from the college football season. We're almost there.